Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm going to interview my cousin, Michael Walsh. Michael, all the way from the west coast of Ireland, thank you so much for taking part in this today at such short notice.
No problem, Paul. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. I suppose I should start by saying today is Valentine's Day, so 14th of February. So can we send the love across the Irish Sea to all the cousins over in the UK?
Indeed, and all over the world. We were just discussing how we've got family, New Zealand, America, and we'll go into that later on. But you know the history and the love's out there, mate, and it's absolutely fantastic to be speaking to you today. So I know where it began, but where did it all begin? Where were you born? Where were you brought up?
Well, I suppose I and my parents never really left home, unlike your parents. We're based here in Galway, in the west of Ireland, in a very rural community near, I suppose the nearest town to us would be Uachtarard, which is often described as the gateway to Connemara. So a very rural setting. I know the house that our my grandparents, your great grandmother was brought up in was built back in the last century. That house is still there. Our Auntie Kitty lives in it.
Yep.
So that's home. I suppose I've been fortunate. I joined the police, and I'm sure we'll speak about that, as did you. Went to work in Dublin, went to work in other parts of the country. I'm still serving in the police, and I've been fortunate to come back to Galway in the last 10 years and serve in my native county, which is good. And I suppose spend time with my parents and siblings and extended family.
And how far from your dad do you live? How far are you?
I could throw a stone to my dad's house.
Lovely.
I suppose we were brought up on a small farm, on the side of a mountain almost. And again, fortunately, we all, each of my siblings, we all got a little site to build our own house. So it's kind of like the Walsh row here. There's myself, my sister, my brother, my Aunt Kitty, and then my dad. So we're all on the same street, which has advantages and lots of disadvantages.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I can feel your pain, mate. I vividly remember as a child coming and staying with your parents and staying at the cottage, and as a 6-year-old walking down to over the back. There was a lake over the back, and you had a dog called Fly, if I remember rightly. And I just walked for miles, 6, 7 years old with a fishing rod, and I just did my own thing. And I was as safe as houses. And I remember your grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were digging the turf. They were cutting, footing the turf and going to Aunt Bridget's and Dick, and the smell and the cooking and the food, and it brings back so many happy memories as a child. And I remember when you were born. It's a beautiful part of the world, and it's still unspoilt. But what was the motivation to leave that part of the world and join the Garda?
I'd like to say that you influenced me, Paul, but I'm not sure where the fascination for the police came, because none of my immediate family, I know all of your family are police orientated or have a history or a connection with the police. But for me, that connection wasn't there. I suppose as you go through school and you're kind of trying to decide, what am I going to do with life? Some of my friends were looking at the police, and I applied thinking, okay, look, I'll have a look at this. And I was immediately successful, unlike some of my friends. And I said, okay, I'll give this a try. And I suppose that was back in the early 90s when maybe there was a recession and there wasn't a lot of work there. And my mother encouraged me, said, look, go and try it. And off I went, and I never looked back, and moved to Dublin, and I suppose had that experience of city life and everything else. But I think that all brings back to what you said there about where we live and the ruralness of it and the open blank canvas that we live on. It's that freedom. You know, as you spoke there about the fishing rod in the lake and the dog and all that, that's freedom. And I suppose having traveled the world and lived in cities, to come back to that. As kids growing up, we didn't appreciate it. Yes, we had a fabulous upbringing, a fabulous place to live, but I appreciate it more in later life now, and bringing my own kids up here. It is just a fabulous place to live.
Oh, it is beautiful and totally unspoiled. And I always remember going with our other cousins to catch the fly. You know, go and catch the mayfly, and you have a big box of mayfly, and they get sold to the American tourists who are going to go fishing on the Corrib. And it was an idyllic childhood. You know, for me to have the opportunity to come out there, it was idyllic. And of course, if you go back even further, we had Aunt Mary's husband was in the Metropolitan Police from about 1934, there or thereabouts, and then he joined the Grenadier Guards, and he landed in Normandy. After the war, he then came back and joined the Met Police, and he retired in the early 70s, and they moved down to West Cork. So we've got a huge history of policing, and in fact, we have an uncle, and I'd love to find him. My grandmother's uncle, he went to New York and he joined the police there. And if I could just find out who he was and what he did, you know, you've got loads of connections in New York, so have I. It would just be absolutely wonderful to find out all about him. And I know we were talking about family history earlier on. So what roles have you undertaken within the Garda?
Yeah, I suppose, as I said, I started in Dublin in 1993, and like any young police officer, you're straight out on the beat. My first station was called Irishtown Garda Station, and it was right beside Lansdowne Road. One of my first tours of duty, and one of my most memorable tours of duty, was a riot at a soccer match between Ireland and England back in '94, I think that was. So that was one of my introductions to policing stadiums and public order and public disorder. So I started there in as a regular police officer. I quite quickly got onto a motorcycle because every Garda station back then would have had a motorcyclist, and I found that great because it gave you great freedom to, you know, as a young fella, I was very active. And as you know yourself, sometimes if you end up in the police car with an older guy who may not be as active, you're kind of governed by where they go and what they do. Where when you had the bike, you had that freedom to go and do whatever you wanted. I remember one particular night, my sergeant telling me, after I had 11 prisoners arrested at different stages during the night, he said he was going to let the air out of the tires of my motorbike if I didn't stop bringing in prisoners. But so I started there. I, for a small while, worked as a detective in that station, kind of part-time when they needed somebody to fill in on special operations. But I kind of missed the motorbike. I kind of had a passion for it. And the traffic corps was advertised, which is kind of your roads policing units, but the traffic corps in Dublin Castle was advertised. And I said, you know what, I'll give this a shot. And I went in there in 1999 or thereabouts, and I spent 5 or 6 years there. In there, predominantly, we were doing VIP escorts. So I'd have met a lot of the American presidents around that time. I had photographs with Gorbachev, with who else? Archbishop Tutu. Lots of memorable photographs. The Irish presidents, all the Irish politicians. Really good fun, you know, escorting teams. We had the Ryder Cup. We had lots of events like that. We had the EU presidency for a year or 6 months. And I remember being on tour around Ireland for 6 months, living out of a suitcase, which was a bit of fun. You were almost on holiday, a busman's holiday, let's say. I got promoted from the traffic corps, as it was called in Dublin Castle, and I was sent back to our training college, our police training college, which is based in County Tipperary. in Templemore. And I ended up spending 10 years there, not by choice, but I met my beautiful wife. She was a teacher there, Caroline, and we worked together for a couple of years. And because she was a teacher contracted to the police college, she didn't have the opportunity to move anywhere else. So there was no point in me moving anywhere else. But eventually, there was vacancies for internally for crime analysts, and she had a background in that kind of education. So we moved up to Galway, and she now is here as a regional crime analyst.
Wow.
And I'm here in Galway as a crime prevention officer. So that's what we've been at for the last 5 or 6 years here together. So it's quite good.
Excellent. What did you train when you were at Templemore? What was your specialist subject, or was it general policing?
Yeah, I suppose when I went in first, it was general policing for recruits, your law and procedures and so on. But then I suppose quite quickly I transgressed into what we call operational skills training. So it was kind of continuous professional development for the full-time police in all skills other than firearms and driving. So method of entry, CBRN, chemical, biological, nuclear, radioactive, search, first aid, and all of those skills, batons, handcuffs. I suppose I maybe specialised a little bit in public order. I would have done a lot of work with the PSNI in Northern Ireland, a little bit of work with the Manchester Police and so on. And going back to the soccer stadium in Lansdowne Road and the riot, looking at a lot of protest and protester removal. We would have had protests around the country in the 0809 following, I suppose, the crash, the economic crash, budget protests in Dublin. We had protests down in County Mayo, quite close to us here in Galway. Shell to Sea, the oil company, were importing gas and oil off the west coast, and there was environmental protests there. So I suppose you had that operational experience along with your I suppose teaching. We were out on the ground as tactical advisor. I was trained by the PSNI as a public order tactical advisor. I was actually the TAC advisor for the G8 summit, which was hosted in Northern Ireland. But of the 8 countries, 6 of them are actually residing in the south. So we don't get any credit for hosting a G8 summit, but we had most of the work. But it went off very, very peacefully, thankfully. So look, I suppose when you look at my history of my career, it's been very diverse. I've done a bit of everything, really. But I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm almost 30 years in the door. May 1993, I started. So in 2 or 3 months' time, I'll have 30 years under my belt, which is it's just been a blast, really.
And it goes so quickly, doesn't it? I mean, the problem is that once you finally hang up your handcuffs, the next 6 years, as it is for me, they've gone so quickly that I just can't quantify it. It's amazing. But I tell you how far your name spread. I always remember being at the Irish Embassy in London for St. Patrick's Day, which was sponsored by Guinness and Jameson's, and it was absolutely fantastic. And there was a contingent there, as you would imagine, from the Garda. And I said, "Oh, my cousin's in the Garda." "Oh, is he? Yeah. Who is he?" So, "Oh, yeah, we know." Everybody knew you. I mean, it was literally everybody there knew you. And oh my life, there were some really, really good nights there.
Yeah.
When did you get involved with the IPA? Because the International Police Association, I'm a member, but you're well involved in that. Let's start from the beginning of that. How did you get involved with the IPA?
I suppose, like many young police starting in our police career, we were introduced to the IPA, and it seemed just a lovely thing. It seemed like a real opportunity to think bigger than your own police force. And the IPA, I suppose, was started by a man from the UK named Arthur Troop back after the World War, I think about 1950. He started the IPA because I suppose he was visionary in seeing that, police need more than just their own police force, that we need to be more cross-border. And while IPA is built on friendship, there is still that professional connection. And the great thing about it is, I mean, in my phone now, I have a number for a police officer in pretty much every country in the world. And I can send a text or an email and say, look, I'm coming, or would you give me advice or a recommendation, or can you help? And often it could be medical emergencies, it can be anything. But to go back to your question, it was that, I suppose when somebody introduced you to it by way of a presentation, and you saw police officers coming together with the different uniforms and all that, it resonated with something really exciting. That it's not that narrow-minded, I'm only the Irish police. We are a bigger organization across the world, because at the end of the day, as police, we all do the same thing.
Yeah, we do.
It doesn't matter what your uniform is like, what your handcuffs are like. We're all doing the same thing. We all have the same problems, and it's great to be able to learn from each other. And look, we've all been through it before, so we can share those experiences. But also in a social setting, you mentioned the Guinness and the whiskey. I mean, that's all part and parcel of the friendship that the IPA brings. So I suppose I joined the IPA back in 1993 when I joined the police, and I suppose I was just a regular member for many years and had many great trips, St. Patrick's Day trips to the USA and so on. And then when I was in the Garda College, I ended up on a committee, a local branch committee in the college, and I suppose very active with all of the new students coming in, I suppose imparting my knowledge of the IPA and them, showing photographs of me, maybe at St. Patrick's Day events and so on. And that, I suppose, in turn was giving back what I had, received 10 odd years previous. And then I found myself on a national committee. And I ended up on the national committee. I was a treasurer for a while. I was vice president for a while. And then I was going to World Congress, and somebody asked me, put your name in the hat for an auditor's position. I was the treasurer in Ireland at the time. Put yourself forward for the auditor's position. So I did. And it was my first World Congress in Israel in 2012. And I was elected as an auditor. And I suppose then, because I was the auditor, I was going to World Congress every year. And I spent the next 7 or 8 years being there. And I suppose meeting everybody and enjoying the experience of the World Congress week. And following that, I suppose my term as auditor would have been finished. You can do 2 terms. And there was a vacancy for treasurer on the international board. And I suppose, the fact I had the experience as a treasurer in Ireland, the fact I had been 2 terms as auditor of the international accounts, it almost made sense for me to run for that position. So got elected 4 years ago in Croatia, in Dubrovnik, as the international treasurer of the IPA. And that's where I've sat for the last 4 years. And we're up for election again this coming October. So if there's anybody listening there that can throw a vote my way, it would be appreciated.
Well, you've got my vote, mate. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic. So being an Irishman, talk me through you've taken part in St. Patrick's Day parades in, I think, New York, Boston, Chicago. Is that right? Is that around the right sort of areas? Yeah,
I've been to St. Patrick's Day, New York, Chicago, Boston. That's been pretty much it. Yeah, that's enough, I think.
Well, but what was that like? I mean, you're marching in one of the biggest parades in the States. I mean, New York and Boston. I don't know what Chicago's like for Irish people, but you're talking 2 of the biggest cities with an Irish contingent. What was that like?
It's absolutely amazing, and don't dismiss Chicago. It was brilliant as well. And Chicago actually have 2 parades. They have the downtown parade on the Saturday, and they have the South Side parade on the Sunday. And actually, I remember in Chicago they asked us to lead the parade, so we were given the city flag and the other flags to actually march at the front of the parade, which was a huge honor. But I mean, the sheer scale and size of New York, marching up Fifth Avenue or down Fifth Avenue, whichever way we went, was huge, because you have police there from pretty much all over the world, thousands and thousands of police, all in their uniforms, all enjoying the occasion. You have, what feels like millions of supporters out on the streets, all supporting police, supporting what we're there for, supporting St. Patrick's Day. It's just a really proud day to be Irish. And I don't need to go on and tell you about the parties after the parade. I mean, it's just really good fun. It's just a wonderful occasion, a wonderful thing to do.
I'm sitting here grinning because I know exactly what they're like, mate. And you can't remember a great deal the next day. That's the problem. When you joined the Garda, did you think for 1 minute you would be travelling to? I mean, you've been to every country, haven't you? As a representative of the IPA, you've been to pretty much across the globe. Did you imagine that when you first joined?
No, absolutely not. I suppose when I joined, I was thinking about, being a Garda, being a member of the police here in Ireland, and even traveling to Dublin for my first police station. That was a big step, and I never foresaw that I would go beyond that, other than maybe on a vacation somewhere. But to have that opportunity within the IPA, as you said, to travel to pretty much every country in the world, is been breathtaking. And it's not just the traveling to the other countries, it's the hand of friendship that the IPA gives you, because you arrive in the airport and you're met by a colleague. You know that you're not going to be, taken advantage of. You know that you're going to be safe. You know that you're going to be brought to the best places and you're not going to be ripped off. If there's anything you want, that they will do whatever they can to assist you. And, so it's almost like walking into a police station back home and saying, can you help me with ABC? You have those colleagues that will just go beyond to do whatever that is. But I mean, it's reciprocated back here. I mean, the spirit or the motto of IPA, it's servo per amiceco. In English, that means service through friendship. And everybody, thinks of the word friendship, and that word resonates with them. But the other part of it is service. Like a police service, we're there to serve, and we serve our colleagues. So, I'm sure when you come to Ireland with your golf clubs, hopefully this year, Paul, I'll be there with open arms and maybe a pint of Guinness, and I suppose, extend that hand of hospitality, that hand of friendship, and make people feel welcome. And anything we can do for each other, we're really a big police family.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's such good value as well. I mean, I think it's somewhere in the region of, I don't know, £25, €30 a year, but it gives you access to so many different things, and including they've got holiday homes all over the world. I think there's 5 in Ireland now, isn't there?
We've 6 actually. We've 6 in Ireland now. We bought one in recent years there in Killarney in County Kerry, which is a beautiful part of the country. It's a fabulous apartment, a large 2-bed apartment on the ground floor. Each bedroom has a double and a single bed, so it sleeps 6. They're en suite. It's part of a hotel complex, a 5-star hotel complex. So you've use of all the leisure facilities. I mean, you're only paying, I think, I know in this apartment complex, you're paying less than half what other people would pay to have a week's vacation there. So, I mean, I've been there with my family on a couple of occasions. There's pitch and putt, there's tennis courts, there's absolutely everything there. It's amazing. But yeah, we have six houses here in Ireland. Our main house is in Dublin. I mean, for €20 for a night to get accommodation in Dublin. I mean, hotels these days are €200 thereabouts for a hotel room. I was at a rugby match actually in Dublin last year, and I met a colleague at the rugby match, and they're like, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I'm staying in the IPA house for €20." They're like, "Oh my God, why didn't I think of that?" They were paying €600 that night for accommodation. So, I mean, people say, "Oh, it's 30 quid or it's whatever it is for membership for the year." One night in the IPA house, and you've made that back, and then some left over. So it's really good value for money.
And of course, you do courses as well, don't you? There's Gimbalm, which is, if I remember rightly, it was a Nazi headquarters during the Second World War. But it's been taken on by the IPA, and it's a place where people can go for lectures. And, you've got to be a member of the IPA, you've got to be a former police officer. But it is, they do some fantastic courses, human trafficking, drugs, the whole 9 yards. And it's really, like I say, really good value. And
yeah, Gimbrun Castle, it's near Cologne in Germany. An amazing little place. Last time I was there was very little coverage, 3G coverage or 4G coverage, which was great. So you're actually getting an escape for a week. There is Wi-Fi if you do choose to use it. But I mean, they have absolutely amazing facilities there, amazing classroom facilities. They have a bar, an honesty bar, so there's no barman. You just go and fill your own drinks, and you chalk down on a little sheet how much you've had to drink if you can remember. They have a lovely wine cellar, sauna, fitness room, absolutely everything there. And it's police officers from around the world coming together for something in common. And I'm not talking about the bar, I'm talking about the educational experience. And as you said, there's a wide variety of different seminars that are on show there. If anybody listening wants to Google it, just put in Gimborn, Gimborn, IBZ. We'll bring it up, and you can see the full list of seminars that they run. Most IPA sections, most IPA countries will advertise them. We'll even sometimes supplement them to get people to go there. So you can have a great experience there at a really, really good for a really good price, and you'll come back with a qualification or a recognized qualification from it. So it's definitely something if somebody has an interest, particularly the younger members, early in your career, if you can educate and show that you have the I suppose the aptitude or the interest in further educating yourself in police stuff. Like I mentioned battens and handcuffs earlier. I was a baton and handcuff trainer. So I was a train the trainer, and I ran some seminars over there, and young police officers and left that seminar with a qualification that they can come back and be an instructor in their own country in baton and handcuffs.
Wow.
Where a young member might not get that opportunity within their own police force, but by going to Gimborn, they come back and go, well, look, I have the accreditation, I can do this job now. And that a lot of young people have said to me has changed their career paths, has put them in a better position for promotion, and so on. It just opens new doors. So as you know yourself, education is no load to have, and the likes of Gimborn is a great facility and should be used as much as people can use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, the continued professional development element of policing, certainly these days, it's absolutely vital to get on. And of course, you run the International Police Association Guinness site, don't you? I mean, what Irishman doesn't like a pint of Guinness? But you run the social media side of that, and you've had coins struck and one thing and another, and you've got people from literally all over the world that comment, and they'll take a picture of themselves in whatever country with a pint. That must be real fun.
Yeah, look, that was started as a bit of fun. We started that in 2013. We were in Copenhagen for our World Congress. So I think that's where we came up with the idea of the IPA Guinness Forum. At the time, there were a number of different forums within the IPA. There were like countries coming together, like-minded countries like the Mediterranean Forum or the North European Forum or whatever. And I said, let's start something fun, because IPA is predominantly about that fun and friendship, and it doesn't have to be always the very serious thing. So we started the IPA Guinness Forum on our Facebook page there. I think we have about 2,000 members now, which, as you say, I posted something there this morning about, Happy Valentine's Day with a pint of Guinness with a little heart on top. But it is all about just the other side of IPA, the fun side.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, but it's all fun, to be honest. I mean, we do the as you know, the night at the Tower of London, the IPA night at the Tower of London on a Tuesday evening. I'm going this evening. And it is fun, and when you see happy, smiling faces, it's absolutely brilliant. And the commonality, policing is an international language. And it doesn't matter what press are trying to kick the living daylights out of what I did, what you do. There's still a high percentage of people that trust you and I and trust our occupations. You'll always get detractors. The detractors have been there for centuries. But actually, even criminals understand the police. They even hardened criminals have respect for the police, and it's a great job, and long may it continue. What are you going to do when you finally hang up your cuffs, though, Michael? What have you got planned?
That's a good question, Paul. I don't honestly know. I really enjoy what I do now. I am, as I said earlier, I'm a crime prevention officer. And I suppose I have been a crime prevention officer about 5 or 6 years now. And for the first 24, 25 years of the police, I always thought I was making a difference. But I see now that I am making a real difference. I never valued crime prevention. I've done a lot of training with Secured by Design, which is a UK police association. And we're trained in designing out crime, almost trained like architects to look at a proposed building estate or housing estate and design the crime prevention before it's ever built. So I really see the value in what we do now. So I'm enjoying doing that. And if I was to retire in the morning, I could see an opportunity from crime prevention because, as you know, crime is never going to stop.
No.
Crime might change. We see a lot with cybercrime at the moment, human trafficking and all that goes with it. Crime will not stop. Once there's money to be made there fraudulently by criminals, they will continue to do it. So crime prevention always has a place in society. And I think it's, for me, it wouldn't be about making money. It'd be about doing something good, giving something back. When I retire, I'd have a pension. So it'll be about doing something to, I suppose, pass the time, but to give something back to communities, to give something back to the public, to make people feel safe. I think that's what I've done for 30 years, and that's what I'd like to do. I know a lot of people go into to volunteer in different organizations and charities and stuff, but I could see me staying in crime prevention in some regard to be my way of giving something back to communities and making, as I said, people feel safe.
Do you cover the whole of Galway, or have you got a particular area that you cover?
Yeah, I cover all of Galway. So, I mean, it's a big county, as you know, as a city, which is probably the 4th biggest city in Ireland after Dublin, Limerick and Cork. So, yeah, all of the city and county have 2 council areas of the city council and the county council. So, to be honest, there's no day off. People, I suppose, that work in councils and everything else don't see the police at the end of the phone, and my phone just never stops. I put it on silent for this morning, and already I have about 3 or 4 missed calls. So when I finish with you, it's returning those calls. So it's a very busy portfolio, but I suppose what I like about the crime prevention too, there's that bit of flexibility. I can do the work at my own time when it suits me. I can pause the phone to have a conversation with you or have a cup of coffee with you. I don't have to respond to something urgently. And I suppose that my latter years in life and the career, it's nice to have a job that you can slow down and enjoy it. But
because of the rural nature of where you live and Ireland in general, because of the crime takes place, but you could be talking several miles between crime sites, and it's linking all those together. And I suppose your analysts do a fantastic job with that. But I mean, here we have a lot of issues with rural crime, where farms are being targeted, etc., etc. And I assume that it's probably exactly the same there.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to work with our different stakeholders. With the farmers, we have the Irish Farmers Association. Like this morning early, I was dealing with golf clubs, actually. There was a couple of golf clubs broken into over the weekend, more in the Tipperary and south part of the country. But I mean, and if you look at a golf club, it's the perfect location to commit a crime because it's rural, it's isolated, there's nobody there at night time. And it's usually full of goodies, be it cash or golf equipment. So it's working with the Golf Union of Ireland and these other key stakeholders to get that information, get that crime prevention advice out, and to say, don't keep the cash there, upgrade your security and however is recommended, and working with them to try and mitigate the crimes. But as you said, the analysts are a huge resource as well, because they can almost predict when the next crime is going to happen and where it's going to happen, and for our frontline officers being able to respond or to being able to predict when something's going to happen is really good as well, because they can put, I suppose, be it checkpoints or surveillance or undercover police there to hopefully apprehend the culprits. And it's that sense of teamwork, I suppose, the working together that we accomplish something like that. It feels like we've done a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you a quick story about a golf club burglar. We had we found a body, or say found a body. He was taken out and shot in the Epping Forest. And when we ran his DNA, we couldn't identify him for weeks. But when we ran his DNA, we had a hit at a golf club. And what he'd done, he'd used a sledgehammer to smash the glass at the golf club. He's gone in there, taken the golf clubs, but he's nicked himself and left his DNA behind. So we knew, yes, he was dead, but we knew that he was our burglar. So from that, we were able to work it. But what he was doing is he was stealing the clubs and having them shipped down to places in Spain where they were being sold on the golf club, in the golf courses.
Right.
And, it's instant cash, isn't it? It gets converted straight into cash and happy days.
Yeah, it's all about opportunity. And I heard speaking of stories, I heard an interesting one about a UK criminal. He was a burglar, a house burglar, and what they target here, it's cash and jewellery predominantly. But this burglar, he was interviewed by the police over there, and he said that he more often than not stole jewellery. But he went to the person's property with a stamped, self-addressed envelope. So he took the gold, put it in the envelope, and he always broke into a house close to a post box. So when he left the house, he just posted the jewellery home to himself, because he said more often than not, because he was a well-known criminal, he was going to be stopped by the police walking down the street, searched, nothing on him, and they had to let him off. And 3 days later, the envelope of jewellery arrives to his house. So they are clever. And if they were to put those clever ideas into something more productive, it would be a better world, I'm sure.
It would, absolutely. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. When we take a statement in the UK, we give people the opportunity to add, alter or correct anything that they've said so far. Is there anything that you'd like to add, alter or correct in this podcast?
No, absolutely. Look, it's been a pleasure. I did forget to mention, actually, I had the great honour of having an audience with Princess Anne in the UK about 2 years ago, because IPA UK celebrated their 70th anniversary. And this came in 2020, of course, in the middle of COVID. So the celebrations were delayed, but in, I think, 2021, or was it early 22, I had the great honour of going over to Skegness, I think it is, on your East Coast.
Yeah.
And we had an audience with Princess Anne, so it was a great honour to be there. But look, it's been a great honour to be here this morning with yourself, and thanks for the interview. Looking forward to listening back and reminiscing about the good times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, Michael, one thing I would like to ask you before we go: what links have you got? Where would you like us to look for the IPA and all the other great work that you're doing? I'm going to obviously put in the Garda and what have you, and we'll put this far and wide.
I suppose, many different countries have their own websites and everything else, but the main website is the International Police Association website, and our main office is based in Nottingham, and we have two very dedicated staff there, Hannah and Lisa, who work there, and they do a lot of our social media, actually. So the office is called the International Administration Centre. So you'd find that on Facebook, for example. It's International Police Association. We are undertaking a big marketing program at the moment. So anybody that's on social media, just if they look for the IAC, IPA IAC, and just like and share and reshare all of our content will be great, and just get our ratings up and get more people involved. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And we, as I say, we've got quite a following across the world now, and hopefully we can get some more people involved with the fantastic IPA.
Great.
Michael, thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your time.